Whoa, what the hell was that? Sorry, there was just a very loud explosion. That was incredibly loud.
What was it?
I have no idea.
Man.
That was fucking weird.
Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast with Sean Patrick and Josh Adams. I am here, Bob Zero, but I didn't do anything, so I'm just here. I guess I saw one movie, and I have seen others, but it's just been the week from hell, so apologies for me not talking much this episode. I'm getting it all out of the way now. Visit us at ihatecritics.net. Everyone's a critic podcast.com, ihatecritics.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The handle is Critics Pod. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Alexa, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. Give it 5 stars. Tell your friends and follow us wherever you can. Patreon.com/criticspod. It's the best way to help support the podcast. And then our TeePublic merch page at ihatecritics.net. Or any of our websites, up in the right-hand corner. You can click on there and buy yourself a mask or a shirt or whatever you want. Before we get going too far into the podcast, both Naya Rivera, a television star from Glee, and then Kelly Preston passed away this week. Were you familiar with, did you guys watch Glee or any of the shows that Naya was on?
I watched Glee. And she was probably the best part of that show. I'm not just saying that because she just died. I mean, truly, her character, Santana, was a standout for how unusual and complicated she was. This LGBTQ character who sort of emerged into that lifestyle as the show went on, and embraced that role. So with so much complexity and so much beauty, the romance that she developed with Heather Morris's character on that show was really one of the better things about that show. Even as that show began to decline in quality, that was still very interesting. And so she was quite a good actress, and it's terribly, terribly sad. Yeah,
it's such a heartbreaking story too. They find her son just sleeping on a boat. It's heartbreaking anytime something like that happens, but this one in particular just really, really stuck out to me. I can just imagine, my kids or something like that. It's just heartbreaking. And then
I have heard of that actress, of course, and I have heard of that show, but I watched about 5 minutes one time, and I just knew it wasn't going to be for me. So I did follow the news of it, and I feel much the same way that you did, Bob. It's kind of just like oh my gosh, that would be the worst thing in the world for that kid to have to go through. Yeah.
And then Kelly Preston apparently had 2 years struggle with breast cancer. I had no idea. I don't know that a lot of people did. I was pretty shocked to hear that she had passed away this morning or recently.
Yeah, they kept that quiet, and I guess by her decision, they decided to keep that quiet. And she hadn't worked since Gotti in 2017. And it's, again, it's so rare that the media allows somebody to keep this type of thing as quiet as they did, which is good for them. I mean, truly, I'm very happy for them that they got to have that just to themselves, because so often these types of things are leaked by the Inquirer or some nonsense like that. So I'll never forget her and Jerry Maguire. She was a ball of fire. She was just all kinds of talent in that film, and not just the sex scenes. I'm just talking about everything she did in that movie. When she punches Tom Cruise in the face, it's just one of those great scenes.
She steals just about every movie she's in. Even Sky High, her and Kurt Russell were awesome in that. And obviously Mischief was one of my favorites as a kid. But yeah, it's sad, whenever anybody dies, it's sad, but especially when they're that young. Like Carl Reiner had a nice life, but and so did Kelly Preston, but it's still 57, 58. It's just too young.
Way too young. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Rob Reiner. I know we talked about him before, but did you see the tribute that he was part of for The Princess Bride?
I think so. Was that with him being tucked into bed?
It was Carl Reiner reading the story from Princess Bride to his son Rob Reiner, who is playing the Fred Savage role. So he's Peter Falk, and Rob Reiner was Fred Savage, and it was really lovely.
It's very cool. I didn't watch it with sound, unfortunately, but I did see it. All right. Anything else before we start the show?
No. Thankfully, everybody else appears to be alive at this point.
Coronavirus hasn't taken over yet. The Old Guard. Good way to start.
The Old Guard, yes, with Charlize Theron as the star here, a Netflix film based off of a popular book or comic book. I'm not exactly certain. But it's the story of a group of warriors who are immortal. They've been fighting wars for centuries, and they are now in modern times. And they haven't had a new member of their group in a number of years, but they all have these kind of connected dreams. And these connected dreams lead them to their first new member in centuries, played by Kiki Lane, who's a Marine in Afghanistan who essentially is murdered in front of people she knows, and then she has her throat cut, like it's definitively seeming dead, and then she heals and comes back to life, and she doesn't know why, and it turns out that she's one of these immortals, and she's retrieved by Charlize Theron and brought to be part of this team. This is a very straightforward action movie. You know, the plot involves a evil pharmaceutical company that wants to capture the immortals and figure out how they've managed to live all this time. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays a guy who betrays them and sets them up to be taken. I mean, it's an origin story for the most part, and very, very straightforward, but very entertaining. Charlize Theron is always great to being a badass hero. She's just got that toughness and that steeliness and that charisma that carries you over anything. I mean, even Atomic Blonde, for all its faults, she's pretty incredible in that movie. She's pretty incredible every time she's on screen. And I really enjoy her. I enjoyed this premise, and I actually look forward to seeing more of this story.
Josh?
I'm sorry I didn't see this one, but I did check out the trailer for it, and it does seem interesting. But, of course, once you have that initial description, Sean, that you had, I start thinking about the film Underworld for some reason. There's lichens and vampires and all that good stuff. But none of that is going on here, I presume. It's probably not something that I would see, and it's not Charlize Theron's fault. But if I'm going to see a movie of hers just because of her, it would be something like Young Adult, or Monster, something that I know that she's going to showcase all of her talents, as opposed to an action film, which is fine, but I don't necessarily need to see it for her, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually like this quite a bit. I think she's probably, I haven't seen the John Wick movies. Between her and Keanu Reeves, they got to be like 1 and 2 in terms of action stars right now.
True.
Going back to Mad Max and even Atomic Blonde, like you said, I thought this was really good. It is very straightforward, but there's some neat things in it they do really, really well. Her original partner, the way she is captured, they really do a good job of visualizing that and making you understand what she goes through, and it's kind of terrifying if you really think about it. And
yeah.
It was pretty phenomenal. And I don't know. I just thought they did a really good job at certain times taking this unique premise. They start off with a scene where you think it's going to be the end of the movie, and it's only 5 minutes later. It's just pretty creative use of traditional stuff, kind of twisting a little bit to make it original. What I thought was going to be the second half of this movie is actually going to be part 2, probably. So that just made it that much more interesting. I don't know. I quite enjoyed this a lot, and I'm looking forward to see where this goes. It was a pretty fun movie, and I think she's one of the best action stars right now, and up there all time.
Yeah, there's a lot of really solid twists and turns in this. This is directed by Gina Prince Blythewood, who's known better for movies like Love and Basketball. And so this is kind of a change of pace for her career. and she does a great job of bringing character stuff into this typical action movie mold, and that really works.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather watch like this than. This is kind of like a smaller version of those Marvel movies, more in its own niche and lane kind of thing. But it's, I don't know. I just think it's neat. It's like, and if it is a comic book, it makes sense. I knew nothing about it going in, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's one of the better action movies I've seen in a while, but I don't go to see a lot.
Yeah,
of
this would go. Unlike a lot of stuff that Netflix does, this would go great on the big screen. This would play really, really well. As just the kind of great action movies that we kind of love.
Yep.
I was going to ask, is this something that would have looked better on the big screen, or should have been, in order to appreciate its full value? Because when we talk about action scenes and large productions, I don't think we've really said anything yet that's blown us away in a streaming service original film. I mean, obviously there's some good dramas that have come from that, but I haven't heard anything, at least from you guys, saying, oh, action blockbuster, really great on the small screen.
I don't think visually it makes a difference, but it would have been better watching with an audience and a bigger crowd. But it's not a movie that needs to be on the big screen, but it would have worked better than almost anything else Netflix does. Mission Impossible and the Fast and the Furious, those are more stunt show things that look cooler on the big screen. This isn't that. But it would have been, I just imagining the audience interacting with some of those scenes, like the scene I was talking about, this I thought was terrifying. I don't want to give anything away because Josh hasn't seen it. Having the audience kind of react with you would have probably made it more powerful, I guess. But in terms of like the way it looks, it didn't need to be on a big screen, but it definitely would have been better, I guess.
I definitely think this is the kind of movie that would have succeeded in a theatrical run, and probably set up a sequel and a number of sequels based off of what they did here, because it is that solid.
Definitely. Palm Springs.
Palm Springs. This is a Hulu original directed by Max Barbakow and starring Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti, who's best known for her work on How I Met Your Mother, where she played the mother. She's basically, they're attending this wedding in Palm Springs, a desert resort. Andy Samberg's character, we find right away, has been caught in a time loop where he's just repeating the same day, this wedding day, over and over and over again, where he's just a guest at this wedding, and he keeps waking up on the same day. It's Groundhog Day, and but this time, Kristen Milioti one time follows him to this cave where where the source of his power is coming from, or where the source of this repeated day is coming from, and she accidentally follows him inside and ends up getting stuck in this time loop herself. They're not alone either, because also J.K. Simmons is in this loop as well, and they're each repeating this day in very humorous ways. And I like the chemistry a lot between Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti. They're quite funny together. They also are quite romantic together. I like not so much it's not like truly dramatic scenes, but the romantic scenes, the character scenes are strong too. It's a fun movie. There are just enough laughs here to get you by, but I thought Andy Samberg had a little bit more depth than he's ever had before in a movie. I've never seen him have any kind of depth before, so this is definitely new territory for him, and I did like that. I liked the dimension that he had here. I also loved the idea of how many times J.K. Simmons' character hunted him and killed him, because they can't die. But Simmons is so pissed off that he got caught in this time loop that he keeps hunting down Samberg's character, and that pops up a couple times as quite funny.
Josh?
This one was surprising in that I forgot about it, having seen the trailer a while ago, but forgot about it completely. And when I heard the phrases Andy Samberg in a leading role and a time loop film, my wife and I were obviously thrilled at that thought, but then it slipped our mind until it got released this past weekend. We've been watching a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine together, and I don't know if either of you have watched that show, but it's in the vein of Parks and Rec and The Office. Same writer, creators, mostly actors too, and we love that stuff. So I'm predisposed to already love Andy Samberg, no matter what he does. I get him. I don't know what it is. But then in a time loop film, which starts out as Groundhog Day, basically, yes, of course, but they even kind of get that it's Groundhog Day, but they're trying to do a little something different with it, right? It's not making your life perfect or anything like that. The mechanism in this film does not care whether or not they find themselves, per se. It's kind of on the characters to do that. And the science of it, well, they pretty much do that in a montage, which is fine. But I found myself through the first half of the film or so thinking to myself, this is not just good, it's great. Because the moments that they have, the comedic moments earlier on, in the bar where they go in and meet a bunch of biker type people or whatever, and she throws a birthday party for him. There's just something very special about that particular one. And Sean, I'm with you on Andy Samberg's depth. I didn't think he had it in him either, but in the same way that a lot of comedians can progress throughout their careers, if they're gifted enough, they've got that bone in them. And I think he's got it based on this one. It kind of trails off a little towards the end. Not quite as amazing as I was hoping as I was going through this, but J.K. Simmons is really the perfect person to play the character that was in this film. He's diabolical enough as well as sarcastic enough to really pull off a guy that hates somebody for pulling him into a time loop, as crazy as that sounds. So I think this one is worth more of a watch than most streaming movies that I've seen over the past couple of years. I'm really glad that I took the time for it.
Yeah, I didn't have the time, but I was kind of looking it up on Twitter, and the number of comedians that were saying how amazing this movie was through the roof. I mean, everybody from Nanjiani to Patton Oswalt to those are the two off the top of my head, but it wasn't just them. It was dozens and dozens that I saw on Twitter just saying, go see this movie right away. So it makes me want to see it. It's just a matter of getting away from the baseball field for 5 minutes in work to actually watch it.
It's quite good, and it's nice to see some new voices making an impact here. I don't know who Max Barbacow is or Andy Ciara, who wrote the screenplay, but good on them. They did a heck of a job for a first time out. And this is also a movie that was to be distributed by Neon, so this was actually intended kind of as an indie release that ends up at Hulu because of the whole global situation.
Crazy. Have you guys heard of the movie Becky? With Kevin James and Joel McHale. I watched that recently. Talk about depth.
Really?
No. It's I mean, it's probably the best thing they've ever done, but that's not saying. I mean, I shouldn't say. I don't know much about Joel McHale. Kevin James, movie-wise, this was the best thing he's ever been in, but that's not saying a whole lot.
No.
Maybe, that and Paul Blart, I don't know. I'll have to flip a coin. If it's ever on Flickchart. Greyhound.
Greyhound, yes. This is Tom Hanks' new movie that he wrote the script for. Directed by Aaron Schneider, who is best known for the movie Get Low with Robert Duvall and Bill Murray. This one is quite a different movie from that one. That one was a small-scale comedy about a guy preparing for the last years of his life and his death. This one is much different. This is an action movie set in the midst of World War II aboard one of the more incredible ships that's ever been created by American companies. The ship here is just this absolutely incredible thing that was built for speed as much as it was for anything else. And it was there essentially when they were trying to get supplies to Britain for the first time, as the Americans were sort of entering the war. You could go about a few hundred miles away from the coast of the United States, and then the planes could not protect the ships anymore. So it was going to be up to these Greyhound ships, these really fast ships, to protect these giant ships that have all the supplies on them. And you've got this stretch, about a 3-day stretch of ocean that you have to get across with U-boats circling everywhere to try and get across that and keep those U-boats at bay until you can reach the air cover that is coming from Britain. And so this 3-day period where basically Hanks's character, who's the captain of this ship, codenamed Greyhound, is trying to keep all of this convoy alive, as much of it as possible. Him and 2 other destroyers are part of this convoy, these giant ships, and these German U-boats are circling everywhere. And from the middle section of this movie, once we get out from under the air cover of the opening scenes and heading towards the end when the British air cover is going to come in, is just nonstop action. And the action here is phenomenal. It's so well captured. This is really nonstop excitement. The way this camera whips around this very small space that Hanks's character is in, right at the front of the boat, is fantastic. And then of course they capture all this excitement of dropping depth charges or dodging. These ships could dodge these things coming off the submarine. What do you call them? The missiles coming out of the submarines. They could dodge them because they were that quick. They could turn on a dime. These things are so skinny at the front of the boat. And the detail that they capture on this is so exciting and fun to watch. Hanks's character doesn't sleep for 3 straight days. He barely sits down because he's so focused and so intense in the midst of all of this, because the U-boats just never stop. Throughout the whole thing, they're nonstop. They're looking, different U-boats are coming around all the time, and especially at night. And so you have to have somebody who's going to be as vigilant as this character, and Hanks is so great at playing this character. On top of that, they add a little bit more depth and romance to him as well, because you see at the start of the movie, there's a cameo by Leah Thompson as a love interest of his, who, even though he's in his 60s, they have this romance where he's kind of looking forward to a future, and that's kind of exciting as well. I mean, he's not a character as a young man, and they acknowledge that, and yet they add that element to it. I really like that a lot. I really like everything about this movie. This is one truly exciting action movie.
Still doesn't make me want to get Apple. I mean, unless like Kevin Smith and Rob Zombie both signed exclusive agreements to only be on there, I don't think I would ever subscribe to it. There's too many subscription things, and I'm drawing the line at Apple. I'm not doing it. I don't care how good anything is. Send it to Netflix or Hulu. Or Amazon. You don't need to be exclusive anymore.
I gotta ask this for the one person that watched it, Sean. Would you, having seen a movie like Das Boot before and other seafaring films, does this rank up there with U571? Yeah, does it rank up there with them? Is there a particular hierarchy of them so that I can get an idea of just how good it might be? Because I love Das Boot.
It's probably no Das Boot, but it's kind of like the opposite of Das Boot, really, when you think about it. Because
sure.
That's set on the submarine. This is set in the destroyer, and that cat and mouse game is exciting. And this kind of makes a good pair with that, if you want to look at it from that perspective. Plus, this movie is only 84 minutes long, and nonstop action throughout. So that's definitely a recommendation on this. And I do think it is an incredibly well made movie. There's I don't want to call it it wouldn't be an Academy Award contender per se, but in terms of World War II action movies, this is really, really good stuff.
Tom Hanks is in it. They'd make it a contender. It's just how it is. him and Meryl Streep, it doesn't matter. Anything else on Greyhound before we move on?
Maybe it might be on Blu-ray and DVD one day. I don't know how Apple is handling their services like this, and how they intend to make money off of productions like this.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you can always get stuff probably through you probably get one, like through iTunes or whatever. I'd imagine you can buy it. I don't know. Maybe I'd do that if it was good enough. Netflix at least earned it. They waited a long time, and then finally they started doing the original stuff. Apple just piggybacking. I don't care how good.
Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for
Sorry,
the linear,
Josh.
legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
All right, sorry, I cut Josh off. What was that?
No, that's okay. It's completely fine. I was just noting for Greyhound, it's something that originally was a theatrical release, apparently in January of 2019, delayed a full year until Apple TV finally got it. So it just is one of those things that actually has been a part of the theatrical experience. It just never quite got there. So I wonder how much they paid for this film, Apple TV, as opposed to, because they had like a $50 million budget, and did it make its money back just from Apple TV buying it? That was just a question I had.
It's interesting, though. I doubt it, but maybe. The Big Sleep.
Yes, our classic this week is The Big Sleep. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall in the story of a private eye who gets involved with this family, and this family has a lot of secrets, a lot of murder going on around it. I actually got caught up in just the opening frame of this movie because I just love this movie so much. The opening frame of this movie is just a silhouette of Bogart lighting Lauren Bacall's cigarette, and that Howard Hawks knew that just that image would communicate exactly what you're in for here, because of course this had become a famous meme in the 1940s, and for what a meme was at the time, of him just lighting her cigarette, because that's how they met in To Have and Have Not, was him lighting her cigarette. And so that iconography moves forward 2 years after they've been married and been in the public eye for over a year as a couple. This was the first time out with them after they had gotten married, and he capitalized upon that iconography beautifully, and he brings them together here in this story where Bacall is a little bit sidelined, but still, she's there more than enough to make an impression, because she is just incredibly beautiful and so beguiling. She's one of those performers that you can't take your eyes off when she's on screen. He's playing Philip Marlowe here, who, of course, is one of the more famous detectives in film history. Been played by multiple different characters, but his, of course, is the iconic one. And lots of really terrific twists and turns. You never really know where this story is headed, and I just enjoy Bogart so much in this type of role. He's just so commanding and so in control here, and so effortlessly cool, beginning to end, just effortlessly cool. I dig this movie so much.
Josh?
And this is something I saw, over 10 years ago or so, when I was in a bit of a Humphrey Bogart phase. And although I didn't get a chance to watch it this time, I did catch a recap and read about it, and I reminded myself of some of the reasons that I liked it. And whenever I heard the term film noir, before I really understood what it was, The Big Sleep was always a part of that conversation. And I didn't quite understand exactly what that meant, other than it seemed to be just black and white, meant noir. But really, it's about an atmosphere. And I remember that this one captured kind of an underbelly type of atmosphere that few films in its time did. And so that's why it became associated with that. But as Humphrey Bogart goes, this character is a bit more fun than some of his brooding characters, because he's having fun with things, I suppose, even though he's trying to solve a mystery. I remember liking it, but beyond that, is it something that I was dying to watch again? Not necessarily, but of black and white films, when I want to go to something like that and I immediately think of Bogart, it's this one and The Maltese Falcon and Casablanca are the three that I think of the most. And I think that's probably typical of Bogart, but for sure it would be a part of that triumvirate.
Yeah, I mean, my brother, I used to think I was into film noir when I was like a kid trying to get into movies, and I would be like L.A. Confidential in Chinatown, and my brother, he actually was studying movies, and he's like, no, you need to go back and watch The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep, and he had just a long list of the actual film noir movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've seen this one or not. He made me watch a bunch of them. So, and sometimes when you watch too many, you kind of lose. I remember Maltese Falcon the most, but it's like Westerns, things I avoided, because cartoons, Robert the Rabbit, things that we've done have taken these movies and made them kind of cliche in a way or whatever. Not cliche might not be the right word, but we're seeing it on Bugs Bunny and other things growing up, and then you go back and watch the source material, and it really does stand out when you watch these movies again, and they're way less homework than you think going in, if that makes any sense.
I always wonder why the mystery genre hasn't made a comeback. I know Knives Out was big last year, but I wonder why this type of private eye movie hasn't lingered in our memory a little bit more. Maybe because I guess that type of detective probably doesn't even exist anymore. But this type of storytelling still should, because it's not like these are brilliant twists and turns. They're pulpy, twists and turns. There's a lot of melodrama to it, but in a fun and kind of exciting way. That only really, the star duo of Bogart and Bacall could pull off. And really Bogart himself just being such an incredible movie star makes so much of this work. Anything that might come off as convoluted or a little bit overkill in terms of the twisting and turning of the plot, you don't care because you're so invested in Marlowe and you're so invested in where he's going and the way he's putting things together. Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's not even just that that this type of detective doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it's just the fact that we just don't have great movie stars anymore. Right. I wonder if Hollywood even invests in movie stars anymore. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like they would prefer, kind of like the NFL doesn't want to put names on jerseys anymore. It's kind of like you keep your helmet on if the team is the most important thing. Right. Hollywood wants the movie to be the most important thing as opposed to having to worry about trying to retain a star. And I think we've lost that the ability to create the kind of star that Bogart was. Because back in the day, in Bogart's day, it was a big deal to make somebody a star. They would go out of their way to make actors and actresses into their own brand of star because they had them under contract and they knew they could. They knew they had them under contract for years. And granted, they were slave labor contracts, but they were contracts that guaranteed that if they created this brand, they were going to get to use it over and over again. And maybe since they don't have that power anymore, maybe they don't want to create that kind of star anymore. I
think the audience too plays a role in that. The way our viewing habits. I mean, we have stars, but they're not guaranteed to be successful. I mean, The Rock makes probably the most money. But you're going to have, for every Baywatch, you're going to have Hobbs and Shaw. It's not going to, it really comes down to the franchises and whatnot. Robert Downey Jr. can't miss when he's Iron Man, but throw him in Dr. Dolittle and he's worthless. And so I don't know that it works the same. Tom Cruise, The Mummy, but when he does Mission Impossible, it's a guaranteed hit. So part of me thinks it's the viewing habits. And the other part is, you say it's pulpy, but at the same time, back then it might have been different. I think that audience is going to accept that more than us. Knives Out had to do something different to make it work, and we don't like to take straightforward as good as we used to. Instead of a straightforward noir movie, we'd rather watch a Gerard Butler movie, not You and I and Josh, but like. It's like the standard American audience. So I think it's more that than anything. If a movie like that's going to work, you need to have something like Knives Out where they do something that you don't even see coming. They tell you the twist right away and then trick you again. So that you let your guard down a little bit.
I was gonna just bring up the idea. I'm sorry, Bob, if you had another thought.
No, I'm good.
Go ahead. what I remember out of The Big Sleep and even The Maltese Falcon, and to a certain extent Casablanca and Edward G. Robinson and Chinatown, those are all kind of in the same category of crime noir or whatnot. Is our modern day noir something like an Elmore Leonard novel on the big screen, where you've got kind of a charismatic lead who's discovering things along with the crowd, and there's some humor involved, there's some darkness involved? Is that what modern noir is? Is that kind of like the Elmore Leonard of its day?
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't think the film snobs will allow that, but yes, I do think you're right. I mean, that's probably it's where it's gone, and they probably called it its own thing, but it's definitely inspired by that and done in a more fun way. And I mean, yeah, I think you're onto something there.
See, I'm away from the game, from the movie game for a while, so my thoughts aren't quite as interesting as they might have mediocrely been before. So thanks for humoring me, guys.
I think they can make this movie. I think, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is kind of a movie like this. You can still make this movie. The Nice Guys is still kind of a movie like this. They can still do it. They just don't.
I just watched The Nice Guys a couple of weeks ago for the first time since the theater, and it worked even better this second time. So, yeah.
But those aren't massive hits, and so I do think they work, but you're only going to see certain directors attempt it. Let's move on to 1990, and we'll stick with the private detective genre and check out Andrew Dice Clay's version.
Yes, let's blaspheme Bogart, shall we?
Hey, you're the one who compared the two.
Oh man, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane stars Andrew Dice Clay as a detective in the Philip Marlowe vein, because he does voiceover in Los Angeles, and he's a private detective, I guess. But he's a rock and roll detective. I hate this movie. This is awful. It's unfunny, and I know Dice, was great in The Star Is Born, and there's the positive vibes towards him these days, but he's never been to my taste in anything. And aside from a couple of scenes in Pretty in Pink, I've never found the guy appealing at all. And he's certainly not appealing here in a lead role. He's just not a guy that I enjoy as a person. Yeah, I mean,
he's one of those comics like Larry the Cable Guy who starts doing a character and he gets wrapped up in it, and he has to just kind of go with it for 2 or 3 years, and he made the most of it, I guess. He was wildly successful, but I was too young to enjoy it or to even really be exposed to it. And by the time I was old enough to get exposed to it, it was just kind of lame at that point. So I don't know. And I got to imagine even Sean was a little on the young side. You're slightly older than me. He definitely had his audience there for a quick minute, but I don't know.
Go ahead, Sean.
I was in his demographic, even though I wasn't supposed to be. And technically, he's R-rated, but I mean, 14 and 15-year-old boys were the people that really liked Andrew Dice Clay. That and misogynists in their 30s, but for some reason, that's what the audience for him was. Children, basically, young teenage boys, and this stupid nursery rhymes and that stupid leather jacket. And even then, I liked a lot of stupid vulgar stuff like Two Live Crew, or there were other vulgar comedians out there that I enjoyed. I just, for something about Dice just put me off. I just never found him funny. I just never found those stupid nursery rhymes funny. And his shtick on SNL, where he got kicked off, and then he got the MTV Awards where he looked like an asshole again. Such an arrogant guy. It seemed to go to his head so much what a big star he thought he was. I couldn't stand him.
That particular poster for the Adventures of Ford Fairlane at the old Super Saver cinemas locally. I don't know what movie my family was going to see, but I saw that poster on the wall, and it intrigued me so much because I'd heard of Andrew Dice Clay being a bad boy. And so it seemed like one of those things like Eddie Murphy Raw in a way that I wasn't allowed to see, but I was tempted to see. And so I asked my parents, ooh, can I go see that? And they, in unison for the first time, and the last time, I'm sure, said no. And that's what I remember about this film. And I watched the trailer tonight, and I see Vince Neil in there, and I just started to think, nah, I'm glad I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a fan, but he was, I think, the first comedian to sell out Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't him; it was a character he was playing. That's something that does go. That unfortunately, it also ended his career a little prematurely, but he had made plenty of money, so I'm sure it wasn't that big a deal to him. But nonetheless, not a fan. Before I get to the big one, Quick Change.
Quick Change stars Bill Murray, Gina Davis, Randy Quaid as three people who rob a bank with a very clever plot that finds them escaping the bank with nearly $1 million, but then unable to escape New York City, seemingly, as the city seems to conspire repeatedly to stop them from getting out of town. Jason Robards plays the chief of police in New York, who's on their tail, and they just keep throwing up these numerous roadblocks to try and keep them from getting to their goal, where they're just trying to get to an airport. And I don't know, maybe it's just too New York for me. I just don't find that it would be that hard to get to an airport in New York City, would it? Now I know they intentionally put these comic roadblocks in place, but I found the whole thing incredibly contrived, which I know, again, it is. It's a comedy, and they have to have the contrivances, but I didn't find any of these contrivances particularly funny.
Yeah.
This doesn't work for me, despite the fact that I can't get the score out of my head.
Josh, did you see this one?
No, and in fact, before I watched the trailer, I literally had no idea that this existed, which is crazy because it's Bill Murray, right?
Right.
It's not like I didn't know who he was, and I even knew who Gina Davis and Randy Quaid were. This seems like a movie that would work out kind of well, even with the odd leads there together. You just don't necessarily envision them working together. But I'm going to have to go with your non-recommendation, John, because here I am thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this. I bet this is some kind of gem out of nowhere. Lo and behold, probably not.
Well, yeah, with that cast in 1990, you should have heard of this movie if it was good.
Yeah, no kidding.
And, I mean, I've seen it. And now you look back at how picky Bill Murray pretends to be or acts like sometimes, or you just don't know if he's going to show up on set or not. And you hear the stories about Ghostbusters and all these movies he did, and then to see that he does this movie, and the only thing I can think of is he just wanted to make out with Gina Davis. That's the only reason I can think he would have done this movie. There really is no other reason.
I just noticed that he was a co-director on this one, so
yeah.
I wonder if that was his opportunity to be behind the camera for the first time, and so he kind of jumped at it, saw an opportunity, it just didn't work out well.
I kind of wonder if there was just on-set trouble and he just sort of took over, which is the kind of the impression that I've gotten over the years, just sort of surface level reading about it, is that this was a troubled production, and Bill worked to help the director, and that's how he ended up directing a few scenes and ends up getting a credit because of that.
Is it at all possible that it's troubled because of Bill Murray?
I don't
trying to direct the movie.
Couldn't say for sure.
I love Bill Murray, though. You hear the things over the years, and it's just weird that he would be in a movie like this.
I find it strange just how often, aside from Lost in Translation, how I find myself on the other side of Bill Murray movies so very, very often.
Ghost.
Josh, you're here for this movie. Why don't you take the lead?
Well, that's very kind. Yeah, the reason I wanted to talk about Ghost is I kind of forgot about it, even though that doesn't make a lot of sense to forget about the number one grossing movie of this particular year. But then when I realized it was approaching, I thought about showing it to my son just as give him an idea of kind of what 1990 was like. I think of 1990 when I watched this movie. He didn't get a chance to. He was on vacation. But in revisiting it, I realized I like the movie mainly because of a few small things. Number one, I love Whoopi Goldberg's performance. I'm sure that it's shrill to some people, and just because she won an Oscar, that will invite a bit more scrutiny. But I've quoted her lines in this movie a ton of times, including anytime anyone gives me a compliment, which is rare. I'll say, you like it? It's autumn sunrise, something like that. Then also the scenes in which somebody either ascends to heaven or is dragged to the other place. Now, as an 11-year-old watching this movie, I don't know why I was allowed to watch it at 11. Maybe it's because it's innocuous. I don't know. But the scene of Willie Lopez and then later Carl being dragged to hell by the shadows scared the bejesus out of me. Because I envisioned that if I was a bad guy, in whatever way, I better be good, because the shadows will come out and do that moaning thing and drag me away. It was such a profound life event. I thought it's necessary to at least come on here and get the opinions of you guys 30 years later and whether or not the film has any kind of effect. Now, special effects wise, this really does not hold up. The ghost effects, the walking through walls and stuff like that, it really shows its age there. But I also realized something, and I feel bad about saying this, but Patrick Swayze, as much as I saw him as a star then, and he was in a way, I mean, this movie made him a really big name. He had some success with Roadhouse, but that's more of a cult hit. And Dirty Dancing was big, but he was playing a particular type of role. Now, I just don't think he's that good of an actor. And I don't know why it took me that long to figure this out. Right. I don't know why I had it in my head that maybe he was a really good actor, but watching this, I realized how stunted the movie is at times because of him. There's a lot of emotion that could have been in this movie, and it's not only because of him, but it really limits the film. Anyways, you go ahead.
Well, before Sean goes, I want to ask you a question, because you left out the most iconic scene in the movie in your description. Does that
sure.
Does that hold up at all?
Well, of course it does, because Demi Moore is really, really gorgeous in this movie, and I'm not about to say that I wasn't looking at the film with some detail, as I did when I was 11, okay? But and I also got this idea of maybe what the whole intimacy thing was about. Do I have to involve pottery at some point in order to excite a woman?
Because I will.
And the funny thing is, Naked Gun 2.5 has a spoof scene involving pottery. And I'm pretty sure I saw that before I saw this. So I expected, once it started in actual The Ghost movie, I expected her to shove her hand down his pants and pull out clay just like Naked Gun. But no, this is actually a bit more tame compared to that one.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I saw About Last Night before this, and this is really tame compared to that when it comes to Demi Moore. So this was kind of disappointing to me when I saw the pottery scene.
Go on. I haven't seen that one. So.
You haven't seen About Last Night?
No.
Full frontal.
You got to see About Last Night.
Yeah.
Now I will.
Oh, man. Yeah, what you're talking about with Patrick Swayze and with Demi Moore even is that they're both incredibly bland. They're both very, especially Swayze is incredibly wooden. He plays a character here named Sam Wheat, who is murdered by essentially a murder for hire. He ends up being a ghost and decides not to go to heaven. He decides to try and solve his own murder before he goes to heaven. And it turns out a friend of his, played by Tony Goldwyn, set him up. The thing about it is that when you put him opposite Whoopi Goldberg, it's not that they don't have chemistry. They do. But she is so alive and so charismatic and just vibrating with energy that you put those two opposite each other, and it just exposes him so much as for just how bland and wooden he is. He's handsome, and that's pretty much it. He's working hard. He's putting a lot of effort in, but she is just so much more effortlessly charming and interesting than he is. And she has the same effect on Demi Moore's character as well, is that she just overwhelms them. Not by her bad acting. She's really great, is the thing. And she's just so much more lively and exciting than everybody else in the movie that she actually exposes them for being bland and wooden. This movie is successful, I think, because, though, it has those bland and wooden elements with this colorful element that comes in, and it has this very broad, wide appeal because of that. You've got Whoopi giving you kind of big, broad laughs. You've got two pretty people that you can watch while you're waiting for Whoopi to come in and make you laugh. And that, it's kind of like, it's just so perfectly bland that it would appeal to just about any audience. And thus you can explain why this is so successful.
Yeah, it's like Coldplay and U2.
Oh, you stop that right now.
I'm not wrong.
I don't know if that was specifically a dig at me, but it works comedically.
No, I would have said that whether you were here or not, but...
I just realized, guys, Naked Gun 2.5 and Ghost are directed by a Zucker. I just made that damn connection.
I thought that was why you brought it up.
No, I'm slow.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since I don't remember how old I was, but I mean that scene was effective, the pottery scene, and I do remember, like Josh said, the ghost, the demon and the hell part and the heaven part. But that's kind of where it begins and ends, and I don't know, maybe we were just dumber back then, because I watched Roadhouse and I don't like it. Like, I don't find it fun. I don't find it fun bad. It's like, really? He's just a cute guy. And we've done it too. I watched Joysticks recently, and that didn't work for me either, like it did when I was a teenager. So, but it just, I don't know. He was clearly a star, but God, give me Kurt Russell, give me Bruce Willis, Mel Gibson. At the time, I didn't know better then, but give me these guys with more charisma and that he was trying to be. I don't know. I would rather Kurt Russell be that big of a star with as good as an actor he is. He never really did break through like that, but he would have pulled it off way better than Patrick Swayze. I hate to speak ill of the dead, but I don't get it at all. But anyway, that is our show.
I have to say, though, that I think I do find Roadhouse to be fun bad. He's not good, and the movie's not good, but I do laugh at that movie.
But I think there's something to growing up with it too, though. Like, I literally watched it for the first time when I turned 30, and I do think there is something because there's been a lot of movies like No Holds Barred that isn't even fun bad. I think there is something to getting to grow old with it that helps.
Yeah.
But anyway. That is our show. Next week, our classic is Streetcar Named Desire, Arachnophobia, Maniac Cop 2, The Freshman, and Navy SEALs turn 30. I feel old. I remember loving Navy SEAls.
I'm not going to ask to come on next week, but
you're more than welcome to.
SEALs, of course. The fact that Navy SEALs turns 30, though, it's one of my dad's, was one of his favorite films, and I never saw it. And I love Michael Biehn for whatever reason, probably because of Aliens and Terminator, but I know that he's one of the leads with Charlie Sheen. Is it worth watching? I mean, I don't want to spoil the next show or anything.
I absolutely loved this movie as a kid, and then Clerks happened, and it was like, what am I supposed to do?
Navy SEAL.
And arachnophobia, if it wasn't for the fact that actual horror films exist, arachnophobia is one of the scariest damn things I've ever seen in my life. To this day, since I saw that movie in the theater, I have still not had frosted flakes. So it's effective. We'll just say that.
Go watch Navy SEALs, and if you feel the need, come back on the show and talk about it.
I could at least just leave you guys a voicemail or something like that.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna watch Navy SEALs.
I'm gonna watch it again. I haven't seen it since I saw Clerks for the first time. Just because I don't know. I don't like ruining movies, and Clerks by itself ruined it without me having to rewatch it. But I'm gonna try to watch it again this week. I remember just the golf scene being fun. I remember being fun. I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We don't know anything new yet. We usually find that out as we go. It's too complicated with the streaming services.
It really is. I guess the numbers.com, I'm told, has some kind of streaming schedule out, but I'm not really. It's been so hard to find a actual streaming schedule. So yeah.
I mean, I guess
I've been meaning to ask. I'm sorry. I've been meaning to ask you guys, how are you handling all of this? I mean, not being able to go to the theater and every week kind of being at least a little bit up in the air. I can imagine that, from the outside looking in, I feel badly for you guys not being able to experience the joy of going to the theater.
I mean, for me, I'll go before Sean because he's better at it than I am. But there's been a few movies that Sean has liked that I thought were okay, that I think I would have loved if they were in the theater. I mean, I know how you saw Midsummer, and I know it was great, but seeing that in the theater with the audience reaction, there's been a couple movies that are lesser versions of that I saw that I couldn't keep my focus on it because of the distractions that happen at home, and that's kind of frustrating for me. But otherwise, it's been kind of nice to get away and do something different. I've heard better reviews of our show lately. Just it's a different show, but it's more laid back and more fun, less segmented, I guess. That's what I've been told by a few people. So I like that version of it, but I do miss the theater to an extent. But I'm also not going to rush back to it when they open up until I know for sure it's safe.
Sure thing.
Sean?
Yeah, I don't know. I want to go back for Tenet. I do, but they've moved it to October now. So,
Right.
Are you serious?
it's looking that.
I saw that they moved it to August. I didn't see the October news. And I mean, I'm totally sympathetic to whatever needs to be done to clear everything up. But that one, oh man, that hurts.
I'll get the coronavirus for that one.
Because there's no way to see that one other than the IMAX.
Well, and there's no reason to bring a Chris Nolan movie into a streaming service. That'd be terrible. As much as I like the show on Interstellar, there were scenes in that were fantastic to look at. That whole wave thing was freaking terrifying. And you could not get that on a TV. I don't care. There's things that you need to see in an IMAX screen. So I hope that never comes to streaming before it hits the theater. That'd be a disgrace. But it'll be back soon enough. I mean, even if it's 2021, that's not that far away. It'll be early. I don't know. The more you read, if you stay away from the opinion pieces and you just go straight to the scientists and the CDC and OSHA and the WHO, you're starting to hear a lot of the same things, so that's a good sign instead of conflicting information. So I think we're getting close, but we just got to kind of hang tight.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Josh, are you eager to go back to the theater?
Absolutely. I'll take the general precautions and I'll do what I've been told is the pussy way to go, which is wear a mask. Just, for the sake of the good of humanity and shit like that. We won't even get into that. But, of course, I'll go because I really miss it. I miss the smells. I miss the idea of experiencing something with a group of people, even if they're 6 feet away, because honestly, that's how I prefer it. It sounds like it would be a really good return to normalcy. Kind of like the one thing that might seal it for me. It's been weird at work for, a number of months now. Working from home, as I'm sure that, a lot of people have done. You guys haven't been able to get together for the podcast, et cetera, et cetera. The whole thing's weird. And to me, the theater, as it is sort of my temple in a way, I can't wait to go back.
I do like... Or go ahead, Sean.
Are you going to wear your Willem Dafoe mask?
Okay, I really should, but of course, as I'm sure you're already well aware, I have Star Wars masks.
But you got to wash them. You should have one.
Oh, I've got multiple of them, and so I probably could order a Willem Dafoe mask, or I hear Hereditary masks are out. Hereditary, not Heredity. So maybe just to honor the podcast and honor cousin Jeff, I could get something like that.
Yeah, I want to do the Willem Dafoe mask. I've just been poor as hell lately. I was hoping the storm would knock my house down so I could get an insurance claim to build it back up, and all the shit that keeps going wrong with it. Jesus. But it is nice that we really haven't had any technical issues since we've done this, so now we know that in the event where Sean and I can't make something work, we have this option in the future, which I think is good. I think we've gotten pretty good at it, so I'll take it. Flick Shark time, or you guys got to go to bed?
I'm ready. I'm up for it.
Ice Age 2 Meltdown Rat Race.
Damn it.
Well, gee, that's really nice, guys. See you later. I'll go with Rat Race. Yeah.
As will I.
Good. I won't go. Then you guys got it.
Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, or Office Space.
Office Space.
Office Space.
Agreed. Oh, I think Book of Shadows is underrated. Road to Perdition, The Count of Monte Cristo.
Road to Perdition.
Oh, that's actually kind of a tough one. I have both of those movies. I'll go with The Count of Monte Cristo only because Taylor Hoechlin in Palm Springs, he pisses me off so much that I'm just remembering him in Road to Perdition. This is just a revenge vote.
I will flip it because I hate them both. Road to Perdition wins. America's Sweethearts, The Sound of Music.
Sound of Music.
Yeah, I'll have to say Sound of Music.
Yeah. Major League, The Fly, 1986.
Major League.
Major League.
Agreed. Horrible Bosses, Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. Pardon me for saying that. Bob, you go ahead and vote. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Horrible Bosses. It doesn't matter. You guys already won.
But speaking of Dirty Dancing, I mentioned it last night because of the Whoopi Goldberg thing this past week that I was having. Beth showed me Sister Act for the first time last night, and that is directed by Emil Ardolino of Dirty Dancing. And I mean, it's a pretty standard Hollywood film, but I did enjoy Whoopi Goldberg once again. So that's all.
All right.
The Revenant, Avatar.
The Revenant.
Revenant.
I would rather be beat to death than watch Avatar. Which is kind of what The Revenant is. Donnie Brasco, Disturbia.
That's a good one. Disturbia is a really good movie. And I find Donnie Brasco to be overrated. I'll actually go Disturbia.
I'll go Donnie Brasco.
I'll go Donnie Brasco too. It may be overrated, but it's also, I felt like it's come back down to earth lately. This will be fun. Knowing or Ninth Gate.
Oh, God.
I'll take Ninth Gate.
Well, you know what I'm going to pick.
I'll take the Ninth Gate. Brazil or the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford?
Brazil.
I'll take Brazil for its potential alone.
Yeah. I Love You Man, Miami Vice, 2006.
I Love You Man.
Ooh. I love you, man.
Yeah.
I also love you guys.
Coffee and Cigarettes, Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness.
I haven't seen Coffee and Cigarettes, so by default, Army of Darkness.
I thought you were going to say by default Coffee and Cigarettes. I'll go Army of Darkness, obviously. All the President's Men, Back to the Future 3.
All the President's Men, although I did express a newfound appreciation for Back to the Future 3 recently.
Yeah.
I agree on that one.
You've Got Mail, Pitch Black.
Pitch Black.
Pitch Black.
You've Got Mail. Bend It Like Beckham, The Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises.
Agreed. Thor, The Dark World, Into the Wild.
Into the Wild.
I know it's Thor.
I'll have to agree that Into Wild is a better film.
Oh, really? I thought you hated that movie.
I really do, but Thor: The Dark World is my least favorite Marvel film. So
Fair enough. Super Troopers, The Craft.
The Craft. I hate Super Troopers.
I am agreeing with Sean.
I have no hatred for either, but I don't love either, so we'll just go with The Craft. The French Connection, Van Helsing.
The French Connection.
Agreed.
Not that much, though. I'm not a big fan of that movie either.
Lethal Weapon, The Truman Show.
I love Truman Show. I like Lethal Weapon. I guess if I was going to watch one immediately, it would probably be Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
I will also go with Lethal Weapon.
I don't care how anti-Semitic he is. I can't hate that movie. I'll never be able to cancel Lethal Weapon. I don't care what he does. It's sad, but it doesn't matter. Juno, Final Destination 2.
Juno.
Agreed. Doom, Die Hard.
Die Hard.
Die Hard.
Agreed. The Road Warrior, Magnolia.
Magnolia.
Interested in Bob's vote here.
The Road Warrior. Open Season, Backdraft.
Backdraft.
That turns 30 pretty soon, or in a year. Ghost Rider, The Love Guru.
Oh, God. Oh, man. Oh, no. Fishing with Gandhi.
Yeah. Two movies I have
choose-
avoided.
I choose sitting in a pool of my own vomit.
So The Love Guru.
Yes.
Yeah, and you would think with as much as our newfound appreciation for Nicolas Cage, but no.
No.
All right, this will be a tough one. Piranha 3D or Pulp Fiction?
Tough one, yeah.
So my son...
Well, I don't know. Let's see. Jerry O'Connell's penis or Pulp Fiction?
Bruce Willis's penis. No, my son, they went to New York to visit my wife's dad, and they social distanced, they went camping, they kind of stayed away from people, but they stayed at her uncle's house at one point, and he came back, and I goofed around and pretended like I showed him radar movies. I really didn't. It was more for the show as a joke, but honest to God, he goes, I watched Django Unchained. And I'm like, what? I'm like, all the rated R movies to watch. Why that one? And apparently, like, one of my wife's cousin's kids just put it on for Harrison and left him by himself to watch it in the movie.
Wow.
And yeah, he's just been walking around the house going Django, singing He wants to start his own podcast called The Rated R Kid and start with that movie. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. They might take you from me.
But if any kid was going to do it, it would have to be yours.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, most of it was a joke because he is petrified of people dying in movies. So, when I pretended like he was watching stuff, he really wasn't. And then when I wanted to start showing him stuff, even if it was like PG or PG-13, if somebody died, he'd walk out of the room with his face covered. And I'm like, how did you make it through the end of Django? And it's like, well, he didn't die. I'm like, but everybody else did. So I have no idea. I don't know. It's weird. And I don't know. He also asked me what fingered means. And I was like, where did you hear that? And he was like, I heard it on a podcast. I'm like, where are you listening to podcasts from? Oh. Good old Jen
What a
Kirkman.
week for you, Bob.
I told him I'd tell him later, and like 10 minutes ago, can you tell me now? I'm like, ask your mom.
Parenting 101.
Last one. Okja, Gross Point Blank.
Gross Point Blank.
Agreed.
I thought maybe the fact that it was an award-winning movie might win it. I don't know. All right. Anything else before we end it?
I just wanted to thank you guys for having me on to begin with, and thank you for inviting myself, basically, because I had singular thoughts on ghosts, so I appreciate it.
No, anytime.
Yeah, anytime, man. We love having you. I will be seeing a movie. I did find one called Dirt Music with Garrett Hedlund and Kelly MacDonald, so that'll be next week.
Is it available anywhere?
It will be on Friday.
Great.
Thought you'd be excited about that. Who doesn't love a good Australian romance?
Well, I don't mind a good Australian romance. It's being available on Friday. My son has tournaments from here on to like the middle of August. He was supposed to be done with baseball by this point of the year, but the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And he goes to like mid-August, and that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So,
oh, man.
But I'll have a chance to see Navy SEALs and Streetcar Named Desire by then, I think.
That's good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, Josh. And if you see another movie down the line that you want to come on and talk about, by all means, especially if we're doing this. This is pretty simple, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was easy to watch what I needed to and all that. So, for sure, it'll have to be something more momentous than Sister Act, but yes.
We do got Navy SEALs, so keep that in mind. All right.
We'll do it. At least a voicemail. Take care, guys.
All right. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.